Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday, there is so many things in the news that even the really big stories we don't have time for, things like this one here, the summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump. What happened yesterday? Anyone tell me? They met, yes, thank you. But what happened? No?
They made an agreement.
They didn't. They quit the summit early. They canceled the summit. Trump is coming home today. They said that no deal was struck, nothing was happening. They just gave up and went home. That's a huge story. We should have talked about that, but we don't have time. Because yesterday, at the same time this happened, this thing happened. Anyone to remind me, who is Michael Cohen? We talked about him last week.
He was Trump's person who helped Trump.
Trump's what?
Fixer lawyer.
Yeah, the fixer lawyer. Very good. He's Donald Trump's personal lawyer for many years, and yesterday, this picture, in fact, is him testifying in front of the United States Congress. This is a pretty big deal. People don't normally do that. While Trump was out in North Korea, Michael Cohen was on the stand answering questions as to what Donald Trump had done that may have been illegal in the past. And he made no bones about it. He said Donald Trump was a liar, a racist, and a cheat. We're going to be going over this in a moment. Before we do, I want to explain that I'm not saying that you should believe Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is going to prison. He's going to jail for 3 years for campaign finance violation and fraud and perjury. The man is literally a convicted liar. He was convicted for lying. So I'm not saying believe what's about to happen here, but we definitely have to talk about it because it's been all over the news the last day. It's worth noting also that if you lie in front of Congress, that's a pretty big deal because anytime you're in front of Congress, you take essentially the same oath you do in front of the courtroom. You can be charged with perjury and thrown into jail for that. So obviously the stakes are pretty high when this happens, okay? Okay? All right, let's begin. The big one, the controversial thing that he said yesterday is that he said that Donald Trump, back in 2016, in a private conversation, just Cohen and Trump, Donald Trump said this sentence right here. Name a country led by a black person that isn't a shithole. And when that happened, of course, first off, we don't know if that's true. This is hearsay. It's Cohen's word against Trump's. But if it is true, first off, that's horrifying and racist and not okay. And secondly, this was done in 2016. Can any of you name for me a country led by a black person that's incredibly wealthy in 2016? How about our country, right? So that right there, kind of weird. But what's important about this, I'm not saying who you should believe either one of them, but Donald Trump has used that term before, and he's used it when the media was covering it. Back in 2017, he had a discussion with both Democrats and Republicans about immigration. And when talking about immigration, Donald Trump said, where the cameras could hear him, why are all these people from shithole countries coming here? He was referring to countries from Africa and Haiti, two countries that both have lots of black people living there. And then followed that up by saying, why don't we have more immigrants from places like Norway? I don't know if you know about Norway, but there's not a lot of black people that live there. And people got pretty upset after those remarks were made back in 2017. But anyway, like all of that still, even if true, there's nothing illegal about saying that. It's super racist and terrible, but it isn't illegal, which brings me to the next thing Cohen said. He accused Donald Trump of multiple felonies, mostly involving campaign finances. He said that Trump raised money to run for president and used that money for things which were not running for president. That is illegal. You can't do that. And the big one was that he allegedly paid hush money to silence Stormy Daniels, the film actress from before that Donald Trump had the affair with. Now this affair, again, like we have never proven that it has happened, but Cohen did something different. In front of Congress, he submitted actual bank statements that showed a deposit of $131,000 given to him on exactly the date that he said when the hush payment cover-up happened. And on top of this, he also said that Donald Trump paid him 10 checks out of his personal account to reimburse him for that money, and he submitted those checks as well as evidence to Congress yesterday. You can actually see the checks were made to Michael Cohen from Donald J. Trump. Each one, there's 10 of them for $35,000, and if you look at the date as well, these checks were issued when Donald Trump was already president of the United States. That is not typical news stuff that we talk about. The president accused of a cover-up during the presidency. While he's president, all that happening is a pretty big deal. Again, depending on how much of that is true. Now, those things happened all day. It was like 7 hours of testimony. But on top of that, the weirdest one that I saw was this one, which is that Donald Trump, allegedly, told Michael Cohen, his lawyer, to go threaten his high school and his college to not release his grades. They said the media was trying to find out what kind of grades Donald Trump got back in high school and college, and that his lawyer threatened threatened them with like essentially legal prosecution if they ever showed anyone Donald Trump's grade. So first off, that's just weird. Like, why do you care so much about what grades you got in high school? But again, we can't prove that. It's all hearsay, except that this morning, the university Donald Trump went to, Fordham University, released a copy of the letter that they had been given that threatened them with legal action. In this letter, Cohen, who writes it, says essentially, if you ever release Donald Trump's grades, we will sue you. You will go to jail. And that letter was published from the actual university this morning, which is crazy. Also, at the end of the letter, in which they're saying, I will put you in prison if you ever do this, the last line is P.S. Mr. Trump really enjoyed his time at Fordham University. Like, why is that even in there? Whatever. Okay, so that is like a huge bombshell of a story. We're going to be seeing more of it over the coming weeks as all this unfolds, but obviously a pretty big deal. Do you believe Cohen or not? Honestly, time will tell. And we really need evidence. We can't just listen to hearsay. I have one more story for you, though, a non-Trump related story, which is about this woman here, this Gabby Giffords. She was a member of the House back in 2010, and she's the last congressman to have an attempted assassination on her life. In 2010, she was talking at a rally in Arizona when a gunman came up with a handgun, killing 6 people and shooting her through the brain. Now, Giffords, she survives, and she has like a traumatic brain injury today, and she did eventually retire from Congress. She's like a gun control advocate now, but her husband has actually decided he's running for her seat in the coming election. He will try and represent her in 2020 when the new election happens. If you don't know, her husband, also super famous. This is Mark Kelly. Anyone know who he is? You probably don't. But he's the most famous astronaut in America today, probably, or is one still serving. Mark Kelly has been an astronaut for many years under NASA, and he's famous because Mark Kelly, you know why he's famous? Mark Kelly has a twin brother who's also an astronaut. Twin astronauts, ladies and gentlemen, and this is actually incredibly useful for NASA for what reasons? Yeah, essentially, like, how does long-term space travel affect people? Mark Kelly, the guy running for Congress, is the longest record for being in outer space. It was like 2 years being on the space station in orbit that whole time. And you have to know, like, how does that affect the human body? If you live in 0G for a year, like your body isn't being pushed down against the Earth all the time, does that have serious health effects? And the way you test that is by taking 2 identical people, one goes into outer space and one stays back on Earth. It's the only way to test it. So in fact, they've been running this test for years. That's why the Kelly brothers are so famous. But the thing is, this is all gearing up for Kelly's new mission, which is they've said, NASA's predicting they're a big new space venture, which is where? Where are we going? We're going to Mars, ladies and gentlemen. That is the idea. By 2025, we're supposed to get to Mars. It is a 4-year journey, way bigger than like the moon landing, for instance. It will cost a huge amount of money and resources, and there's one limiting factor. We cannot seem to get there. For what reason? We've got better rockets than ever before. We can make it there and back easy. Plenty of food, plenty of oxygen. Oh, people are signing up. They go for sure.
The meteors.
The meteors?
The rocks in space are going to...
Oh, it's like asteroids and debris, that kind of stuff. Okay, good guess, but no. The problem, and it's maybe not the first problem you would think of, the problem is waste. It is human waste. It is space poop, ladies and gentlemen. That is the issue that is holding us back. It is the one thing we have not solved on our journey to Mars. And the problem is that we generate a large amount of waste every day, and you can't store it all in a spaceship. So what do we do with it?
You empty it.
Well, you could say throw it out, I guess. The problem with that is that every time you release that, like from the space, like out of the airlock or whatever, you're going to lose some oxygen doing that. And you can't do that every day for 4 years. There's not enough oxygen to do that. So the problem becomes, what do we do? What do we do about all this human waste that we just can't get rid of? And that's where NASA's stuck right now. This is the actual toilet on the International Space Station. It costs $4 million. It is the most expensive toilet ever built. Why does it have armholes and footholds? What is going on there? It is. There's no gravity. You literally have to hold yourself on the toilet the whole time. And then we need some issue because, like, things, aren't going to just go into the toilet like they do here on Earth. You don't want stuff floating around the space station. Like, there are real issues. I know it's gross, but we got to figure this out if we want to go to Mars. It's the only solution. The problem here is that the toilet's only once you get to the space station. It is a 9-hour flight from Earth up to ISS. How do you get there? You can't, in the middle of a rocket launch, be like, oh, I want to use the bathroom, and like leave your seat. It doesn't spacesuits? That's disgusting.
What else are you supposed to do?
You gotta wear diapers, ladies and gentlemen, space diapers. Every astronaut that has ever gone to space has worn a diaper to get there. How does that work for like the glory of outer space travel? It's amazing. It's called the maximum absorbing garment. It's the mag that you have to wear to get there. And these have been around since the beginning of space travel. The first Russian cosmonaut who went into outer space, actually before he got on the rocket, because they didn't have space diapers back then, he had to go to the bathroom right before he got on the rocket. Like the bus had already driven him up to the rocket, and so right there he got out in front of all the cameramen and reporters, and he was like, sorry guys, like turned toward the bus and then peed on the bus wheel to relieve himself one last time before getting into the rocket and going to outer space. And because of that, because he made it and it was successful, it has become the good luck tradition for all astronauts that before they get on the space shuttle, all of them will pee on the bus tire as like the good luck we're going to outer space thing. Now, my question to you is what happened once we had the first Russian female cosmonaut? These are questions that have to be answered, ladies and gentlemen. What do they do? I mean, there's like cameras and reporters everywhere. You can't not do it, or that's like bad luck. You don't want to jinx this rocket.
All the cameramen turn around.
Just everyone turns. Hold on, guys. Just all move around.
Yeah.
In fact, she brought a jar of her own urine with, and then threw it on the bus tire instead. You don't want to mess with bad luck. It's important, right? Space travel. So here's the thing. Once we actually get to outer space, what's the plan going to be? We can't just wear diapers for 4 years. It doesn't work that way. So instead, like there were all kinds of like inventions back in the 60s. This is the first one. This is not going to work. That is not going to go into outer space for 4 years. So instead, as a result, and this is real, we've created, Mark Kelly once talked about how the toilet malfunctioned in outer space. And he said he had to clean up gallon-sized urine balls that were floating through the space shuttle at the time. You do not need that in your life when you're traveling to Mars, right? So, the problem is that NASA's created this. It is called, I'm serious here, it's called the Space Food Challenge. And what it is a challenge to every American student in America, saying that essentially we need a solution. We do not know how to solve this problem. Here's the problem right here for you, ladies and gentlemen. You have to come up with a system that can remove 6 days of human waste. You have to be able to do this without using your hands, operate in low gravity, and not leak oxygen. If you can do all of those things and come up with a system that works, NASA will pay you $30,000. That's right. You got it already, Nate? All right.
So, like, you know how they got the toilet in the spaceship?
Yeah.
Once you're done, you put a lid on it, so it does not get rid of any of the oxygen. And then you flush.
Okay, so whatever your ideas are, send them to NASA, ladies and gentlemen. We got to move on. That's